Okay, welcome back to the channel. We're going to do another rock retrospective today on the Southern rockers, and by that I'm not referring to the South American rockers or the South African rockers or rockers in the south of France or any kind of obscure musical movements. I'm talking about the sound that came out of the American South, mainly blues inspired, of the late 1960s, 70s and onwards. And before we get into that, this is actually the second time I'm trying to upload this video, or that I made this video. Last week I got a bunch of equipment and gadgetry and I was doing stuff, and I tried shooting this video through this device called a gimbal, and it's actually pretty neat, pretty handy, but it requires an app through my phone. And in trying to upload it, the YouTube app shit the bed, or the Apple app for this gimbal shit the bed. So we'll have another go of it today. And if you've made it this far in the video, as you can see behind me, there's my live couch set up for doing live streams. I'll be doing another live stream this evening, Friday, April the 4th. And I'll be going through my most recent vinyl LP record haul. And there's another one coming next week. I don't want to jinx it, but we'll do another record reveal once that comes in. And so, yeah, we'll get to it as far as the Southern rockers. Again, story time. My exposure to this style, genre of music goes way, way back to when I was just a little kid. I remember going to visit my cousin's place, and I forget if we had this record or they had this record, but we had the Charlie Daniels band and the version of The Devil Went Down to Georgia. And we used to play that over and over and over on this little portable record player. And we would just lose our minds, just going crazy over this song. It was, I don't know if it was the groove or the lyric. I mean, it had it all. It kind of typifies a lot of this, what this movement, how it can be defined. There was a definite swagger, some tongue-in-cheek. You know, the country blues influence. But anyways, we would play this song and just go nuts, jumping on the beds, running around the room, and incidentally, my cousins lived right across from my grandmother, and so she could see into the bedroom where we were having our Friday night rock and roll hootenanny freakouts, and she would phone over and say, "Your kids are jumping on the bed." So my cousins always got ratted out by my grandmother, the snitch. But in any case, there's something about that sound that it's been ingrained in me for a long time. And once I started expanding my musical horizons and varying my musical tastes, I started discovering a lot of bands that fit into this genre, this type of music from an early age. Going back to my flea market finds that I would get at the old Spud Stop. The collection they had there. I found a copy of ZZ Top. I think I had Tres Hombres and for sure Fandango. And I played that Fandango, that live side, over and over and over. Like there's such a fantastic jam and groove and attitude. You know, you could feel the energy of the crowd coming through that spinning record, and that was a favorite for me. And then over the years, getting older, was exposed to people like George Thorogood. Although I don't know if he's from the South. You might have to. I'm not going to look it up. I've got my laptop here. I got a slightly different angle I'm working on today because you're on a traditional tripod and stand instead of being balanced on a cardboard box, which I think that's an improvement. But nonetheless, George Thorogood, is he like from Detroit area or something? I mean, another Detroit rocker, Ted Nugent. I liked him. He's kind of carrying a little bit of that southern sound, and he's in Texas now, from what I understand, or maybe he's back and forth. But he kind of encapsulates that cowboy boogie woogie groove, which sort of fits into this whole style of music. And later on, it was Stevie Ray Vaughan, like a true bluesman. Again, another one that taken before his time, tragic plane crash, a helicopter crash. Like I remember the day it happened, hearing the news on the radio back in the early 90s. Just huge loss, but I remember seeing him in Austin City Limits and other videos that were available at the time back in the 80s, when his career was really taking off. And just amazing songwriting, amazing blues interpretations of what he was doing, amazing skill at his craft, and like just a real showman there. And but for me, what really kind of defined this genre, if you will, is a band called Lynyrd Skynyrd. And it was kind of the first few refrains of Sweet Home Alabama. It's quite possibly the catchiest riff in all of rock music. Or I mean, it's $1 billion riff. And I started getting into the Skynyrds, and I just thought it was the best. I remember being a truck driver in the late 1990s. That's when I got my commercial driver's license, and Lynyrd Skynyrd was one of those ones that kept you going through the night, most certainly. But here in the story is kind of where we press pause, because right around that time, late 1990s, early 2000s, I really took a break away from all mainstream media, whether it was movies, television, even radio. I was doing other things. I had seen it all. I was raised on television, raised by entertainment, and it was almost like I needed a cleanse or a purge, just to allow my brain to quiet down or something. So I didn't have a lot of noise around me if I could help it. Like I would drive, to and from in my car without any music playing, nothing, just me and my thoughts for many, many, many years, until late in the mid 2010s, so around 2015, I took a job driving up north in Manitoba, here where I'm located, hauling zinc ore from Snow Lake, Manitoba, to the mine in Flin Flon, where they would process this raw ore. And up there's no radio, there's no nothing. So kindly enough, the owner of the company had XM Sirius satellite radio in the rig that we were driving. So I was able to tune in and listen to something on that lonely, dangerous highway. Man, what a piece of garbage highway. I look back at some of these driving jobs I did and wonder what was I thinking. But anyways, this treacherous, icy road and a very blizzardy winter. I was working there from January to March 2018, I believe it was. And at that time on XM, I imagine they still do this, but they would feature different artists and their musical catalogs. And I've heard like Billy Joel over the years. They would do Elton John, a feature on Paul McCartney, so and so. But this one month that I was driving, they had a Lynyrd Skynyrd dedicated programming. And I started rediscovering Lynyrd Skynyrd, and what really hit home for me was the interviews and the stories the surviving members were telling. I think Gary Rossington was still around at that time, and there was lots of stories and reminiscing, but even just hearing their live voices, it was amazing. And along with the Lynyrd Skynyrd, they would play a lot of the Southern rock that is part of this style of music I'm describing today. And so along with kind of hearing Lynyrd Skynyrd in a new and fresh way for me, I started getting introduced to the Marshall Tucker Band, the Allman Brothers. And, I was familiar with some of their songs, but again, just starting to hear the stories. It's the stories. You make a connection to these people, like how the Marshall Tucker Band got their name, or how, Toy Caldwell was a Vietnam vet from the Marines, and, he came back home and wanted to make his mark making music to change the world. And like it's just these are real people with real lives, and they're bringing their experiences into their art and their music, and showing us who they are, and trying to impress upon us, stirring our imagination to be something more than what we are, or inspiring us to be all that we can be. And so it was really great just hearing these old ancient sounds coming through, the satellite technology in 2018 and to the present day. Like it's just such rich music. And so, heading back after that driving stint, hopping onto the old YouTubes and starting looking up some of these artists, and yeah, just documentary after documentary on Lynyrd Skynyrd and their story. I mean, everybody knows it. I'm not going to retell it here because the details are all to be found on YouTube, and I just love what they were about as a band. Without getting too deep into all the stories, but just hearing about how Ronnie Van Zant was such an authoritarian dictator, virtual slave driver at his relentless pursuit of, functioning and rehearsing and performing at a level of perfection that, most artists, maybe they have that same work ethic, but they were just in that hell house in the Florida Everglades, hour after hour, day after day, making no money for years and years and years until they were an overnight sensation, 10 years after they formed or whenever it was. Like the struggle to get a record label, a contract, and then even after the contracts were signed, the struggles with the record labels. Like it's just such interesting programming, if you want to call it that. Like these things really happen to these guys, and for me, it kind of hit home, and this is kind of where I make a leap to the present day, where I hear or see various channels and people like Andy Edwards or Rick Beato giving their take on stuff, and it was like, here's my take on this Southern rock movement or Southern rock genre. For me, one of the most powerful moments in my musical history, at least, I just want to share this retrospective because this is kind of where I still sit today in holding this position. But let's go back to 1976, and this is video I found on YouTube. In that year, you'll find live performances by Lynyrd Skynyrd in Oakland Coliseum, which is a very good show. But then There was one done at the Knebworth Festival in the UK. And I believe that was in the summertime. I can go back and check it up, but I believe that video is still up for you to go check out. But just a few months later, you know, the tragic plane accident would happen, and half the band would be gone, essentially. The rest would carry on, but in that show, I'll just try to paint a bit of the picture here for you. The Knebworth Festival that year was featuring the Rolling Stones, and the Stones had created, or maybe this was part of the regular tour, but the giant lips and tongue, which was their logo from, I don't know where that logo originated from or when it was first used, but the stage was framed by a big set of lips, and there was a huge tongue that was the stage, and it extended out into the audience. And I'm not sure what other bands were there that day, but Lynyrd Skynyrd was the second to last act before the headliners, you know, the Rolling Stones. So they were opening for the Stones, essentially. And the Rolling Stones gave orders to all the performing acts that day that they were not to use the section of the stage that extended out in the audience. They were to stay back where all the sound equipment was, and not to go, you know, do not cross this line, essentially. Well, in any case, Lynyrd Skynyrd put on a show that day, and this was one of Ronnie Van Zant's driving motivations, is that when we perform live, we are going to blow that audience away. Like, they aren't going to know what hit them, but they are going to walk away knowing they've just seen the best rock and roll show that they've ever had the good grace to witness. And so that day, just song after song, like all their hits were getting played, and just awesome performance. But then the final song, Freebird, starts up, and I guess the audience was kind of taking a breath. Like you could see their energy was almost on the point of exhaustion as the opening refrains of the slide guitar, you know, trickled across the fairgrounds or the concert ground there. But by the time the guitar instrumental got going, they were on their feet, hopping and stamping and going nuts, because what the Skynyrds did at that point to close out their set, through my little screen on YouTube, I was blown away by what I saw. I mean, you had Ronnie Van Zant said, "Screw the Stones, we're going out to the people." And so, you know, you had Curtis Allen shredding and stomping around the stage like some kind of shaved, long-haired Sasquatch, just giving her. And the dueling solo guitars, and like it was just a sight and sound to behold. And I kind of looked at this and came away thinking, you know what this is? You know what I'm seeing here right now? Even though it was 30 years ago, you know, by the time I was over 30 years ago that this was happening. It's now 2025, almost 50 years ago. Wow. This was 50 years ago, next year. And I was watching it, I came across this maybe 5 years ago. So 45 years ago. What I was taking this as is this is essentially the peak of Western civilization. Because everything since that day has been in decline. I mean, okay, we've got technological advances and whatnot, but yeah, just a few short months after this concert, you know, Ronnie Van Zant would be gone forever, as well as other members of the band that, you know, irreplaceable talent and heart and soul. But I see that as the peak of Western civilization, in that you had this bunch of redneck, hillbilly, swamp creatures living in this country that essentially declared independence from British rule, and that British Empire carried the torch for how many centuries, that emerged out of the Roman Empire, which emerged out of the Greek Empire, and so it's all this long, rich history back to the beginnings of Western civilization, up to this peak moment where those redneck hicks from Florida, of all places, make their way back to merry old England and essentially hand the Rolling Stones their asses back to them, because the Stones just stunk up the place afterwards. I mean, by that time they were from what I recall or was reported, they were essentially half sauced and out of their minds as they took the stage, and the performance was nothing to write home about. But Lynyrd Skynyrd, on the Rolling Stones' home turf advantage, had that crowd wrapped around their little finger and just screaming for more. Like it was historic. And so to me, that was like the demarcation of the rise of the British invasion of the late 60s, early 70s with the Beatles and the Yardbirds and all that, the Zeppelins and what took place through the 70s. Like, I don't know, like that moment in musical history, it's hard to beat what Lynyrd Skynyrd accomplished on that day. Let me know if you agree or if I haven't been drinking enough to be saying shit like this on the internet. But in any case, I want to kind of tie this in with some ideas I heard from superstar Andy Edwards himself, and all credit to Andy. He's talked about like the British aesthetic, on how that defines what came out of the British music scene, and how we can look back historically, and one of the elements of all these various acts, whether it's Zeppelin or Emerson, Lake and Palmer or Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, like they all carried this British aesthetic, as he calls it, and he's done great videos, at least 2 parts, and he talks about it as a recurring theme through his videos. But what I want to talk about to finish this off is the American aesthetic, because most recently Andy did a video along the lines of why are all the best bands from Britain. And to a degree, like if you're looking at, say, gross record sales or widespread acceptance, like, yeah, there's really no comparison to the Beatles or Led Zeppelin or some of these acts as just blockbuster, standalone, monolithic entities. But what I guess Andy misses, not being from North America, is I believe there's something contained in the American aesthetic that captures the hearts and imaginations of people all around the world. And so, yeah, people all around are listening to these big acts. AC/DC is still one of the biggest widespread known recording artists of all time worldwide. Black Sabbath would be one of them as well. But it's like there's something about this southern rock sound. Where in Andy's video, he's kind of pointing out, like, really the best American act there is ZZ Top. If you just kind of look at it analytically or objectively, if you can. But to me, it's something more than that. It's something that's, it's like it's in the air here, or it's we've got a Canadian aesthetic, and it's mostly this goofy, idiotic, irrelevant. What other idiotic, insane, kind of inane aesthetic, and it's it tends to go off the rails. Like Rush were such nerds, and they celebrated their nerdiness, and the fans couldn't help but cry for more nerdiness, and that kind of is the Canadian aesthetic. You know? If I could just point to one example, but the American aesthetic is different. Like it's a sound that, you know, there was the LA sound, there was the Texas sound, there was the Nashville sound, there's the New York scene, there's the Chicago scene, the Motown, Motor City scene. And it's almost like collectively, as a body of work, the American artists tend to eclipse everything else, so that no one act, whether Aerosmith or whoever you think is the biggest, it's like there is no one standout that's the king of American rock. It's almost like this collective, this American spirit and an American sound. It's distinctly identifiable. And here's where we get kind of into the esoteric and this aesthetic. It's got this swagger. It's got this tone. It's got a similar kind of humor as the British aesthetic, but it's more in your face, and you know, encapsulated by the Alice Coopers and the Ramones. Like it's kind of difficult to encapsulate it just by words. You got to experience it, but it's there. It's really there. Like Give Me Two Steps by Lynyrd Skynyrd. I mean, they're telling a story about this plainly humorous encounter, potentially dangerous encounter that Ronnie Van Zant apparently actually had at this honky-tonk bar somewhere, who knows where. A place called The Jug. But the songwriting skill and the lyrical content turns it into this delightful, humorous adventure. And it captivates you. And so there's something very captivating about this American sound, the American aesthetic. And it's almost like that Southern sound is close to the foundation of it. Because so much of hard rock or rock came out of that blues influence. You look at some of the things that Eddie Van Halen did or others. Like these guys were influential. All of them, you know. I forgot to mention the Winter Brothers, you know, from Texas. But yeah, it's like the Americans are telling a story about America through their music. And there's something very appealing, very marketable about that. I mean, maybe another aside, just an extension of, you know, the troubles that I mentioned earlier, Lynyrd Skynyrd having with their recording labels and whatnot, trying to get contracts. Like the music industry has changed. Like bands are not marketing themselves the way they did. They're coming up with new and creative ways. I just saw a report or a video the other day on how the Grateful Dead were very pioneering as a live act in that they were allowing concert goers to live tape record their shows. And as long as they weren't profiting from the recordings, they allowed it, and because they wanted to create a sensation that our concerts are an experience, and if you miss this experience, that's it. Like we're not playing this show the same way twice. You need to come see us. And it worked for them. They became one of the most innovative live acts of their day, with a cult following that rivals virtually nothing else since. You know, some more shout outs. You know, 38 Special, Molly Hatchet. Like these are some bands that you know you don't really think much of, but once you hear their songs, Ram Jam, that sound it just starts coming through your speakers, and you're tapping your foot, nodding your head, and you know, air guitaring along or what have you. But getting back to the marketing, sort of, I've got this free association Andy Edwards thing going on, and it's not it's not just rambling on without a point. There's a couple of things I did want to mention in this video because it's kind of relevant in that we can't go back. You know, I think of Aerosmith and their Las Vegas show. You know, the ability for the fans to come to them rather than them touring and going to the fans. Kiss having the Kiss cruises. I mean, of all the boomerish things to do, you know, whether you're Aerosmith or Kiss, you know, appealing to a demographic that has money and leisure time and likes an all-you-can-eat buffet, you know, let's invite the fans over to get on a boat with us, and we'll play our old sets. I mean, I don't know if Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley just ran out of ideas to make more money at what they were doing, but all credit to them. I mean, they're far more successful than I'll ever be, but it just seems so gimmicky, but it works, you know. And nowadays you've got Spotify, YouTube. Like, how does an artist monetize himself? Because the whole process has been turned upside down with this computer age. How is AI going to further transform the music industry and how artists get paid? So it's really an interesting thing. It's like going back to the roots. It's almost like all these things we have today, they built on something, but that something couldn't have been built as a foundation unless certain things were in place. You know, you had the Vietnam War that after that the country was kind of in shell shock, and you had the Jimi Hendrixes and others making a splash, and the Skynyrds were one of them, and then the Allmans, you know, almonds, not almonds, almonds. You know, they did great things. They contributed to that sound that helped heal and unify a country. You know, that created anthems for the youth to stand behind. And so I've done these retrospectives on other bands and other artists, but I think the Southern sound is kind of a class by itself. Like, to take any one of these bands and just do a retrospective, it's almost like you're doing a disservice to the whole genre or the whole collective musical soul that they all share, that musical heritage, the contribution that they've made to Western civilization and its downfall. Because yeah, if you haven't noticed, like, we're kind of in decline here. And so we'll talk about that more on tonight's live stream. If you're still tuning in, it's going to be at 9 p.m. Central Time on the North American continent. So it'll be like 7 Pacific. If you're watching elsewhere in the world, you'll have to look up what that is. I think it's a 5-hour difference between my time zone and say Greenwich Mean Time, but you'll have to confirm that. But it's Central Time. We'll go through my vinyl haul. We'll talk more rants and politics and things going on. It's getting weird, folks. It's an exciting time to be alive, but it's it's like Western civilization is just precariously hanging on by its last shred of integrity and vision. Like, I don't know. It's, yeah, I think we'll end it there. Thankfully, yeah, we'll end it at about half an hour. You know, this could have been a really long video, but I hope you can leave a comment, because I want to know how crazy you think I am, or whether I should pack it all in. I mean, this channel is making an impact. I mean, I got a comment the other day how the curtain rod is actually something that stood out and caused this person, I assume, to subscribe and intently follow the rest of my ramblings. So we'll see if I have something for everybody, whether you're a music fan or a curtain rod aficionado or whatever. You know, there's lots to talk about, and we're only getting started. So with that, subscribe, share, do whatever it is you guys do. You know what to do. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.